Welcome to the January 1st, 2017 GuitarBlog episode on rhythm guitar riff basics covering rock, funk, country, and blues. Now, riffs are one of the most popular ideas studied on the guitar, and whether you're working on Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train or the Beatles' Day Tripper, riffs are fun to learn and even more fun to play. So what makes a great riff and what makes an interesting riff? And, what can a guitarist do to start building their own riffs? These are all important questions, and, in this episode of the GuitarBlog, I'm going to discuss a few different riffs from popular styles like rock, country, blues, and funk. And we're not just going to learn riffs in these styles, we're going to understand where their notes come from and how the riffs are established to create the character of the specific style and sound. So let's get started here in part one of this lesson with learning riffs from rock and funk. All right, let's take a look at example number one. As you can tell, it's an open string rock riff in the key of E minor. Now, one of the styles that I think makes up the most fun category of riffs to play on, guitar ideas is the rock riffs category. I think, hard rock, classic rock, southern rock, metal, they all are fantastic for playing riffs around. And, they have a nice blend of sound when you put on some tube overdrive, maybe add a little bit of a distortion with something like a tube screamer pedal or something, and maybe hit some digital delay, add some chorus reverb. You can create some pretty amazing sounds once you layer up a nice thick overdrive with a little bit of effects. And in example one, what I've done here is just take a common key of E minor rock riff built off the 6th string and demonstrate how I can apply scale lines, some ghost note concepts, double stops, hammer-ons and pull-offs and all that, and even add in an altered chord on the 5th chord there. I had that B7 sharp 9. So there's a lot of fun that we can have with this. Let's learn the riff, and after you have it down, try modifying it a little bit to make your own. I'm going to talk through some ideas on scales and so forth, so you should be able to have a pretty good idea where to go with this thing once we're done teaching it. So let's start off here and just discuss what's happening with it. We're starting from an open 6th string, and we're just doing some ideas on 8th and 16th there with that. And then I'm going into a E and a D on 5th string, drop into the B on 6th string, back to the D, back to the B, jumping down into 3rd position on the 6th string, getting G and A, back to the G. So that's the first measure right there. Then in the second measure, what we're going to do is kind of go up the position here a little bit into the middle of the neck. We're going to start the same with the open 6th string E, but we're going to head forwards here, D and E on the 5th string, going over to the G, grace note slide on the 4th string, taking us from an A to a B there, into the 9th fret. Then the high D, up an octave with that D, into the 3rd string, 7th fret. We're going to do a scratch rhythm or a ghost note effect. And then we're going to add in this little double stop idea here where we have a D and a G together. Okay, so all together that second measure goes like this. Those scratches are kind of nice effect. You can add those in almost anywhere you want. You'll hear Hendrix do them quite a lot. And they really add to the percussive effect of the piece you're working on. In the 3rd measure, though, what we're going to do is go back to a very similar line like we were using in the 1st measure. It's not exactly the same, but it's a little bit along the same lines there. This one drops down a little bit more because once you do the pull off on the 5th string from the 7th fret to the 5th fret, that E to D there, head to the B, you just drop directly down to A, directly down to G, and then just do another quick move of A to G at the end there. And then on the last measure, this is where it's going to get kind of interesting with the B chord here. We're going to have a slide that happens from a B flat to a B natural, 1st fret to 2nd fret on 5th string. And then we're going to edge things out into this B dominant 7th with a sharp 9 there. And then just to wrap everything up, we're going to be hitting a double stop off of an A and an E, so it's kind of like an inverted A power chord. Hitting into the low G there. So from the top of that fourth measure, one more time. And that's the wrap up of it. So, in expanding upon this thing, start thinking about how this thing is set up. Now, it's obviously heavily slanted in the direction of E minor pentatonic. So you can start scoping out how your E minor pentatonic is sitting on the neck. Know where the pattern is down low down here. Understand how it moves through the middle of the neck here as well. So we have ideas that can be centered around 5th to 7th fret into the 9th up off the 3rd string. We can even function a little bit if you wanted to spend some time understanding this region. Sort of that in-between area between the open and the 5th fret. So look at those areas, understand what you could be doing and operating in those regions, and really, take to heart some of the concepts that we've been working on here. We've had some hammer-on pull-off ideas, some slide concepts, the ghost note, double stops, the sharp 9 chord. You can even add in another sharp 9 off the tonic. You can get some pretty cool sounds going on between those areas. So keep a lot of this in mind, because how you end up expanding upon your riffs depends a lot on your knowledge of what's, the setup of the overall first elements of the riff that you develop. I'm coming at all of this from the perspective as if you were composing and you were writing this stuff. So know the key. Well, E minor, understand how some of those scales are going to rip out along the neck. Understand how they lay on the fingerboard and where everything goes with setting up those scales. I was doing a lot of pentatonics here. That's kind of the real premise of this thing. Also, double stops, understanding how you can have some different shapes along the neck. Understand how the double stops can be applied. If you're not great at your notes on the neck yet, just start thinking about what sounds good. If something sounds pretty cool, use it. If you hit something else and you're like, that's not bad. Hit something that doesn't sound good at all. Don't use it. Just use your ear and go by that as your main guide, and you should be okay for a while. But you should learn your theory, and you should start understanding what notes are and what keys that you're working on. It's going to make this so much easier for you. You'll be able to compose riffs so much faster if you understand what key you're operating in, and you're looking closely at all the different chords that are set up on the neck. So anyway, that's example 1. Work with that a little bit. Understand how everything's set up on it. Once you start getting the riff memorized, of course, turn a metronome on. Try and build some speed. But most importantly, use those E minor scale and chord ideas from the key to expand upon its sound. Take this riff that I've shown here, expand upon that, make it your own, reinvent it, come up with other ideas, because if you use some creativity, you're really going to start branching out with these ideas and doing things that are really on your own premise. So we'll wrap up example 1, come back in just a moment and take a look at example 2, where we're going to see some funky stuff going on with a nice 16th note groove that's riffing out in G. So take a short break and come back in just a moment with that one for you. Smooth Jazz Chords introduces chord types that offer a very different sound from the chords that are used in almost every other style of music. The Smooth Jazz Chords video lesson is a 2-part course that demonstrates chord types that are used in the smooth jazz style. These chords are often referred to as triad over bass note chords, and the lesson demonstrates these chord shapes as well as their use using both diagrams and example progressions. Smooth Jazz Chords is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at creativeguitarstudio.com. right, let's take a look at example number 2 now. It's a funky 16th note groove that's riffing out in the key of G. And, you know, funky guitar riffs, kind of one of my favorites because they pretty much put any guitarist who plays them in an instant good mood. There's something very cool sounding and feeling about how the funky shots of a dominant 7th chord, you know, gets mixed with those snappy single note lines that just come across when they're done right and played in time. It sounds so cool. The riff in example 2 takes a choppy 16th note feel to a D7 chord played on the upper 4 strings there. And just riffing out, it's very easy to make, just, you know, borrowing from the 4th string, 3rd and 2nd. Got that high 8th fret tone on 1st string. Then you're moving down into the 5th fret position. And you have that bar at the 5th fret with that 6th fret coming in. And those are both dominant 7th chords, D7, C7. But at that point, we have a guitar lick that comes up there. It's kind of a choppy 16th note thing. You can see how I'm doing that. It's just on 3rd string and 2nd string. I have the 7th and 9th frets come in, and then I've got that 8th fret come in on the 2nd string. Then I move up a little bit. I get the 10 to the 8 pull off, and then working my way back down to the 9th fret. So we just have that sort of that E tone as the central tone there. And that's kind of an important tone to our C7 chord because that E is the major 3rd. So it's a nice sound, the way that builds up. And then when we move into the second half there, we have that repeating riff off of the G7 augmented. So that's just a G7 sharp 9. And then I'm doing this sort of walk down riff that's very staccato, very short and detached. So what's happening there is I start out on a B flat, then I go to a G into an F natural. And those are important notes because it's the root and the flat 7 of the G dominant 7 chord. Then I go down into a D, 12th fret, 4th string, jump kind of back down a little bit there to the 8th fret. That's going to be a B flat tone again. And that's 8th fret, and then into the 10th fret for the C tone. And then resolution takes place into the G again there. So if you notice, there's some B flats that are occurring in this. And that's kind of interesting because the G7 sharp 9 chord, it's got to be natural. But I'm playing B flat all over the place there. Because the scale that I'm looking at for jamming out over that is really going to be the G minor pentatonic. And another thing that happens in there is the sharp 9. Another way to look at it is it's kind of like a minor 3rd. Sharp 9 is just taking the 2nd degree away from the root of that chord and going one higher, augmenting it. But that also is congruent with the sound of minor 3rd. And it's kind of interesting because the augmented 9th chord, sometimes people know it as the Jimi Hendrix, you know, chord from Purple Haze. And, you know, that's kind of an interesting sound because it's got both major 3rd and minor 3rd, you know, sort of jam-packed right into it there. So it's a pretty cool sound, so you're able to function around that chord. So really take that to heart. You know, if you're ever using any kind of a riff or a breakdown of ideas in a key, you know, mess around with trying to understand what other kinds of chords can fit in. Now, funky sounds, you can't get much better than you know, that G7 sharp 9. I mean, you know, that's going to be a huge one for you. Lenny Kravitz loves it. You've heard Jimi Hendrix play it like crazy, and just, you know, countless others. It's a very, very interesting sound, and one that you can easily, if you're decent at the minor pentatonic, you can create all kinds of interesting licks around that minor pentatonic from it. So, you know, in this case, the progression is really moving from a D7 chord into a C7, and then we're focusing down into the root. So it's kind of like a 5-4-1 progression, really. But we're just doing it a little bit differently. We're sort of funkifying it here. We've got these, you know, different bright sounding dominant 7ths. Adding in a little bit of a line there with that. Sort of a scalar idea. And then we're moving into that nice dominant 7th sharp 9 sound. And then that really cool staccato sound, breaking it down there. So there's lots of interesting things that you can play around with here. All this really is a 1-4-5 progression, in the key of G. But again, look at it differently. Break it apart into different ways. Look at the chords differently. This is why it's so valuable to know a lot of different chord types, and it's also really valuable to understand how scales are set up on the neck. If you had no idea that you could take a 1-4-5 in the key of G and play G blues scale over it, you're pretty far behind in your knowledge base. You need to really expand upon that. And, this brings us to the end of example 2, but we're far from over. If you're a member of the CreativeGuitarStudio.com website, you've still got 2 more examples that we're going to work through on the site. And they're really going to go quite far in some terms of looking at some country concepts and some blues concepts. So we're going to be leaning in that swing direction and shuffle direction. So we're going to wrap up the first part of the lesson plan and come back in just a moment in the members area. We'll start working through the next part. And, if you're not a member of the site, I highly suggest, that you take a serious look at membership. The course layouts that I'm doing in there, the electives that I've got in there, like the master classes, these guitar blogs, plus the quick licks lessons. There's a lot of stuff in there that are really going to turn you into the best guitar player that you possibly be. The material is very well laid out. I've spent 25 years organizing it and understanding how it can work the best with over 1,400 students in my local studio, and it's really a great program now. So I look forward to helping you with more of these ideas in the second half of the video in the members area of the website at CreativeGuitarStudio.com. The Blues Guitar Styles ebook is a masterclass course covering a huge amount of information on the blues style, with 8, 12, and 16 bar blues progressions, classic blues styles, plus all the important chord patterns. There's over 50 pages of information, including sections on blues techniques like slide, alternate tuning, and bending. This ebook has everything the guitar player needs for a solid foundation in blues guitar, including 27 MP3 audio tracks for easy at-home study. Blues Guitar Styles is available for instant download in the View Our Products area at CreativeGuitarStudio.com. Well, thanks for watching part 1 of the lesson. Be sure to sign up for a membership at CreativeGuitarStudio.com to watch part 2, where we'll make a study of a few more phrases, including a country shuffle riff, as well as a movable swing blues riff. Plus, as a member, you'll also be able to download the handout for this lesson plan. So I hope to see you next in the members area at CreativeGuitarStudio.com. Thanks for watching. Click here to subscribe to the GuitarBlog Update YouTube channel and never miss another video. Click here to sign up for your free membership to CreativeGuitarStudio.com. And if you take out a paid membership, you'll get premium content downloads of jam tracks, lesson handouts, and full access to all the members area video lessons.